Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UTS Defiant, watching the stars through the main screen. 3 years had passed since the war ended. 3 long years since humans and Zephyrians signed the peace treaty at Kepler Station. The memory of those 8 brutal years of fighting still haunted him. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Lisa Chen sat at the navigation station, her fingers dancing over the controls as she plotted their course through the neutral zone. Ryan Torres worked at the engineering panel, keeping their stealth systems running perfectly. Amy Rodriguez monitored communications, listening for any Zephyrian transmissions. Jake remembered the last battle before the treaty. Ships burning in space, friends dying. The Zephyrians had seemed unstoppable with their massive fleets and powerful weapons. When the peace talks began, everyone thought humanity had lost everything. "Captain," Amy called from her station, "I'm picking up Zephyrian broadcasts from the border worlds, same as always." Jake nodded. The alien broadcasts never changed. Victory speeches, celebrations of their triumph over the weak humans, stories about how they had crushed Earth's forces and driven them back to their home system. The Zephyrians loved to tell everyone how completely they had won. "Any fleet movements?" Jake asked. "Negative, sir. Just the usual patrols," Lisa replied. She had been tracking Zephyrian ships for months now. Their patterns were predictable, almost lazy. They acted like they owned the entire galaxy. The Defiant was one of the most advanced ships in the human fleet. Its stealth technology made it invisible to most sensors. Jake's mission was simple: watch the Zephyrians and make sure they followed the peace treaty. So far, everything seemed normal, but something felt wrong. Ryan looked up from his console. "Captain, I'm seeing increased energy readings from Sector 7. Could be nothing, but the patterns are different." Jake frowned. Sector 7 was deep in Zephyrian space near their industrial worlds. Different how? More ships moving around, higher power signatures, like they're building something big. On Earth, Admiral Helen Carter sat in her office at Fleet Command. Reports covered her desk. Intelligence data from dozens of sources, all pointing to the same thing. The Zephyrians were planning something. She picked up a data pad and reviewed the latest information. Zephyrian shipyards were working overtime. New vessels were being built at record speed. Troop transports were gathering at staging areas. It looked like preparation for war. Helen had fought in the last war. She knew what Zephyrian military buildup looked like. This was bigger than anything she had seen before. Much bigger. Her aide, Lieutenant Greg Harris, entered the office. "Admiral, the morning briefing is ready." Helen followed him to the secure briefing room. A dozen officers sat around the long table. These were the people who knew the truth. The real truth that the Zephyrians could never discover. "What's our status?" Helen asked. Colonel Mary Stewart, head of intelligence, spoke first. "Zephyrian, propaganda continues as expected. They still believe they won the war completely. Their leadership thinks humanity is broken and weak." Helen smiled grimly. "Let them think that. The longer the Zephyrians believed their own lies, the better." "Fleet status?" Helen asked. Admiral Roy Clark answered. "All ships are in position. The stealth fields are holding. No detection incidents in the past month." Helen nodded. The secret fleet was humanity's greatest achievement. Ships more advanced than anything they had during the war. Better weapons, stronger shields, perfect stealth technology, all hidden in deep space where no Zephyrian could find them. Back on the Defiant, Jake studied the sensor readings Ryan had found. The energy patterns were definitely unusual. Too organized to be random. Too focused to be normal shipping. "Amy, send a coded message to Fleet Command," Jake ordered. "Tell them we need clarification on Sector 7 activities." "Message sent, Captain." Jake walked to the front of the bridge. Through the main screen, he could see a distant star where he knew Zephyrian ships were patrolling. Those aliens thought they ruled the galaxy now. They celebrated their victory every day on their news broadcasts. If only they knew the truth. The peace treaty had been signed by Admiral Helen Carter herself. Jake remembered watching the ceremony on the news feeds. The Zephyrian representatives had looked so proud, so certain of their dominance. They demanded that humans stay in their home system. No expansion, no military buildup. Total surrender. Admiral Carter had agreed to everything. She signed every document they put in front of her. The Zephyrians thought they had won completely. They were wrong. Lisa turned from her station. Captain, I'm detecting a Zephyrian patrol approaching our position. 3 ships, standard formation. Distance? 2 million kilometers and closing. They're not scanning actively, just routine patrol. Jake felt his heart rate increase slightly. Every encounter with Zephyrian ships was dangerous. One mistake, one system failure, and their stealth could fail. If the aliens discovered them here, questions would be asked. Questions that could destroy everything. Ryan, status on stealth systems? All green, Captain. We're invisible to their sensors. The Zephyrian ships passed by without incident. Jake watched them on the long-range sensors until they disappeared. Just another routine patrol in space they thought they controlled. Amy received a message from Fleet Command. She read it quickly and looked up at Jake. Orders from Admiral Carter, sir. We're to continue monitoring but maintain maximum stealth. Intelligence confirms unusual activity in Sector 7. Jake nodded. Whatever the Zephyrians were building, it was big enough to worry Fleet Command. That meant it was big enough to threaten the careful plan that had been 3 years in the making. The bridge crew returned to their normal duties. Watching, waiting, keeping humanity's greatest secret safe. Outside, the stars continued their ancient dance. The war had ended 3 years ago, but Jake knew it wasn't really over. It had just moved into a different phase, a phase where patience and deception mattered more than guns and missiles. The Zephyrians thought they had won. Soon, they would learn how wrong they were. Captain Jake Morrison felt sweat on his forehead as the UTS Defiant approached the massive Zephyrian construction site. They had been monitoring the alien bombardment fleet for 3 weeks, but today, something was different. The energy readings were stronger than ever. There's something new in the center of the construction zone, Lisa Chen reported from her navigation station. Massive energy signature, bigger than anything we've seen. Jake studied the sensor display. Among the partially built bombardment ships was something enormous. A vessel the size of a space station, but clearly designed for combat. Its weapon, arrays could destroy entire planets. We need to get closer, Jake decided. This is too important to miss. Ryan Torres looked worried at his engineering console. Captain, we're already pushing the limits of our stealth field. The closer we get, the more chance of detection. Understood. But Fleet Command needs to know about that ship. The Defiant moved carefully through the asteroid field using the floating rocks for cover. Jake watched the distance markers decrease on his screen. 5 million kilometers. 4 million. 3 million. Suddenly, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Stealth field fluctuation, Ryan shouted. Something's wrong with the primary generator. Jake rushed to Ryan's station. The engineering displays showed critical system failures throughout the stealth network. Warning lights flashed red across multiple panels. How long until total failure? Jake asked. Maybe 2 minutes. I can try to reroute power, but we need to get out of here now. Lisa, emergency course change. Get us away from those construction platforms. Working on it, Captain. But it was too late. Amy Rodriguez's communications console lit up with incoming signals. Captain, I'm detecting active Zephyrian scans. They're looking for something. On the bridge of the Zephyrian patrol ship, Hunter's Pride Subcommander Veltar stared at his sensor display in confusion. For just a moment, something had appeared on his screens. Something that shouldn't exist in this sector of space. Sensor Chief, what was that contact? Veltar demanded. The sensor operator, a young Zephyrian named Kextal, checked his instruments carefully. Brief contact, Subcommander. Duration less than 5 seconds. Size and mass consistent with a small warship. That's impossible. There are no authorized ships in this area. The readings were very clear, Subcommander. Metal hull. Active power systems, definitely artificial. Veltar felt his scales bristle with worry. He had been patrolling these sectors for 2 years. Nothing had ever appeared on his sensors except asteroids and construction platforms. A warship contact meant only one thing: enemy infiltration. Begin. Active scanning. Full power. Search every asteroid in this field. On the Defiant, Ryan Torres worked frantically to restore their stealth systems. Sparks flew from damaged circuits as he rerouted power through backup conduits. The stealth field. Stabilized, then failed again. I can give you maybe 30 seconds of stealth every few minutes, Ryan reported. The primary generator is completely dead. Jake made a quick decision. Amy, what's the status of that Zephyrian patrol? 6 ships, all moving toward our last known position. They're scanning everything. Can we outrun them? Lisa checked her navigation plot. Not while maintaining stealth. If we go to full power, they'll detect us for sure. Jake faced an impossible choice. Try to fight 6 Zephyrian ships and reveal humanity's hidden strength, or attempt to escape and hope their damaged stealth would hold. Ryan, one more try. Give me whatever stealth you can manage. Ryan's hands flew over his controls. The stealth field flickered back to life, weak but functional. That's all I can do, Captain. Maybe 10 minutes before total failure. Lisa, plot a course through the densest part of the asteroid field. Use the rocks for cover. The Defiant limped away from the construction site, hiding behind floating asteroids while Ryan fought to keep their stealth working. Each time the field failed, Amy detected increased Zephyrian scanning activity. Sub-Commander Veltar was getting frustrated. His ships had been searching for over an hour without finding anything. Some of his officers suggested the contact had been a sensor ghost, a false reading caused by asteroid minerals. But Veltar knew what he had seen. A real ship. An unauthorized ship. Expand the search pattern, he ordered. Check every asteroid within 10 million kilometers. Whatever was here, I want it found. His sensor chief looked up from his console. Sub-Commander, War Commander Thexal is requesting a status report. Veltar hesitated. Reporting a possible enemy contact would bring unwanted attention from his superiors. If he was wrong, his career could be ruined. If he was right and the contact escaped, that would be even worse. Tell the War Commander we detected a possible sensor anomaly. Investigation ongoing. On the Defiant, Jake watched the Zephyrian search ships spread out through the asteroid field. They were being methodical, checking every hiding place. Soon, they would reach the Defiant's position. Captain, Amy said quietly, I'm intercepting Zephyrian communications. They're reporting the contact to their command structure. Jake felt his stomach drop. If the Zephyrians took this seriously, it could compromise the entire human operation. 3 years of careful planning could be destroyed by one equipment failure. Ryan, status on repairs? I can give you one more stealth burst, maybe 5 minutes. After that, we're visible to anyone with sensors. That's not enough time to reach the border. Lisa turned from her navigation station. Captain, there's one option. The Vega Nebula is only 2 million kilometers away. If we can reach it, the nebula will hide us from their sensors. Jake studied the tactical display. The nebula was partially between them and the nearest Zephyrian ship, but they would have to cross open space to reach it. If their stealth failed at the wrong moment, they would be detected for sure. Do it. Maximum acceleration the moment our stealth activates. Ryan brought the stealth field online one final time. Lisa pushed the engines to full power, racing toward the safety of the nebula. On the sensor display, Jake watched Zephyrian ships moving to intercept their course. They weren't going to make it. Just as the stealth field began to fail, the Defiant plunged into the swirling gases of the Vega Nebula. The dense particles scattered sensor beams and hid the ship from detection. We're safe, Lisa announced. The nebula is masking our signature. But Jake knew the damage was done. Amy was still monitoring Zephyrian communications, and the reports were getting more detailed. Sub-Commander Veltar was convinced he had detected an enemy vessel. Amy, send an emergency message to Fleet Command, Priority Alpha. Tell them our cover may be blown. Hours later, on the Zephyrian homeworld, War Commander Thexal reviewed Veltar's report with growing concern. A brief sensor contact, metal hull, active power systems. The description matched a warship, not a piece of space debris. But what warship could be operating in Zephyrian space? The humans had no military vessels capable of deep space operations. Their surrender had been complete. Their fleet had been destroyed or turned over to Zephyrian forces, unless the humans had been lying. Thexal dismissed the thought immediately. No species could maintain such a complete deception for 3 years. The humans were broken, defeated, barely surviving in their home system. Everyone knew that. Still, the report bothered him. He decided to increase patrols throughout the border regions. If there were human survivors operating as pirates or raiders, they needed to be eliminated. On Earth, Admiral Helen Carter read Jake Morrison's report with a heavy heart. After 3 years of perfect secrecy, their luck had finally run out. The Zephyrians were asking questions. She called an emergency meeting of the senior staff. When they assembled, her first words were grim. "The deception is compromised. We have to assume the Zephyrians will discover our true strength soon." Admiral Roy Clark leaned forward. "How long do we have?" "Unknown. Maybe days, maybe weeks. But we need to accelerate our timeline." "The bombardment fleet isn't ready yet, Colonel," Mary Stewart pointed out. "We could attack before they're prepared." Helen considered the options. Attack too early and they might not catch the entire Zephyrian fleet. Wait too long and their surprise would be lost completely. "We maintain current operations for now," she decided. "But all units need to be ready for immediate deployment. The moment the Zephyrians figure out what's really happening, we strike with everything we have." In the Vega Nebula, Jake Morrison watched his crew work to repair their damaged stealth systems. They had escaped detection this time, but barely. The next encounter might not go so well. The careful game of deception was ending. Soon, the galaxy would learn that humanity's surrender had been the greatest lie in military history. The UTS Defiant moved silently through space, its stealth systems hiding it from Zephyrian sensors. Captain Jake Morrison stood behind Lisa Chen as she guided the ship deeper into alien territory. They had been tracking unusual energy readings for 2 days now. "There," Lisa pointed at her screen. "Sector 7, subsection Delta. The readings are coming from that asteroid field." Jake studied the display. What he saw made his blood run cold. Hidden among the floating rocks were massive construction platforms. Dozens of them. Each one building ships larger than anything he had seen during the war. "Ryan, can you get better resolution on those ships?" Ryan Torres worked at his console, adjusting the long-range sensors. The image became clearer. Jake counted at least 30 vessels under construction. Each one was the size of a battleship, but the design was wrong. Too big, too heavily armed. "Those aren't normal warships," Amy Rodriguez said quietly. "Look at the weapon mounts. They're built for planetary bombardment." Jake felt sick. Planetary bombardment ships meant only one thing. The Zephyrians weren't planning to fight other ships. They were planning to destroy worlds. Human worlds. "Amy, record everything. Full sensor sweep. We need to get this information back to Fleet Command." While the Defiant gathered intelligence, on a hidden base deep in the Kuiper Belt, Dr. Sam Parker put the finishing touches on his latest creation. The plasma lance had taken 3 years to develop, but it was finally ready. The weapon looked simple enough. A barrel-shaped device that could be mounted on any human ship. But the power contained within it could punch through Zephyrian shields like they were made of paper. "Final test in 30 seconds, Sam announced to his team. The target was an old Zephyrian destroyer captured during the war. Its shields were at full power, exactly like the ones protecting enemy fleets. Sam activated the plasma lance and watched as a beam of pure energy struck the target. The shields collapsed instantly. The beam continued through the hull, cutting the destroyer in half. The test was perfect. "Excellent work, Doctor," said Commander Beth Logan as she entered the laboratory. Beth was in charge of special operations, the secret program training, human forces for the war everyone knew was coming. "How many can we build?" Beth asked. "We have enough materials for 500 units. Every ship in the fleet can be equipped within 2 weeks." Beth smiled. The plasma lance would give humanity a decisive advantage when the fighting started again. Combined with their new shield technology and improved armor, Human ships would be far superior to anything the Zephyrians had. What about the training programs? Sam asked. Ahead of schedule. We have 10,000 pilots ready for combat. 20,000 Marines trained in assault tactics. The Zephyrians won't know what hit them. On the planet New Haven, Colonial Administrator Peter Walsh walked through the main settlement. To any observer, it looked like a typical human colony. People going about their daily lives, farmers working their fields, children playing in the streets. But Peter knew the truth. Hidden beneath the peaceful surface was a military base larger than anything that had existed during the war. Underground bunkers held weapons and supplies. Training facilities prepared colonists for combat. New Haven looked defenseless, but it was actually a fortress. How many more volunteers this week? Peter asked his aide, Lieutenant Kevin Brown. Another 200. That brings our total to 15,000 combat-ready personnel, plus civilian support staff. Peter nodded. Every human colony had been doing the same thing for 3 years. Building hidden defenses, training fighters, stockpiling weapons. The Zephyrians thought they had defeated humanity, but they had no idea what was really happening. Back in Zephyrian space, War Commander Thexal reviewed the latest intelligence reports in his command center. His species looked like giant reptiles, with scaled skin and bright yellow eyes. He was one of the most successful military leaders in Zephyrian history. Status report, Thexal demanded. Subcommander Veltar approached with a datapad. Construction proceeds on schedule, War Commander. The bombardment fleet will be ready in 6 months. And the humans? Still confined to their home system. Our patrols report no military activity. They appear to be focusing on civilian matters, trade, agriculture. They show no signs of military rebuilding. Thexal was pleased. The humans had learned their lesson during the war. They knew they could not match Zephyrian military might. Better to accept defeat gracefully than face complete extinction. What about the High Council? Thexal asked. They remain convinced of our total victory. Some council members question the need for the bombardment fleet, but they defer to your military expertise. Thexal hissed with satisfaction. The High Council was made up of politicians and merchants. They understood profit and power, but they knew nothing about war. That was why they left military decisions to professionals like him. The war had been costly for the Zephyrians, too. They had lost many ships and soldiers, but they had achieved their goal, total human surrender. Now it was time to make sure humanity could never threaten them again. On Earth, Admiral Helen Carter received Jake Morrison's report about the bombardment fleet. She studied the images and felt a cold anger building inside her. The Zephyrians weren't content with victory. They wanted to wipe out every human in the galaxy. Call an emergency meeting, Helen told her aide. Senior staff only. Code Black protocols. An hour later, the most important people in the human military sat around the secure conference table. Admiral Roy Clark commanded the secret fleet. Colonel Mary Stewart ran intelligence operations. Dr. Sam Parker led weapons development. Commander Beth Logan oversaw special forces. You've all seen Morrison's report, Helen began. The Zephyrians are building a fleet designed specifically to destroy our colonies. They're not planning another war, they're planning genocide. The room fell silent. Everyone had hoped the Zephyrians would be satisfied with their supposed victory. This changed everything. Time frame? Admiral Clark asked. 6 months until their fleet is operational. Maybe less. Our fleet status? Ready for deployment. All ships are equipped with the new weapons and shields. We have more vessels than we had during the original war, and they're far more advanced. Dr. Sam Parker leaned forward. The plasma lance tests were successful. Every shot penetrated Zephyrian. Shields completely, their armor provides no protection. Helen looked around the table. These people had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. The careful deception was about to pay off. Recommendations? Commander Logan spoke first. We maintain the deception as long as possible. Let them think we're still weak. When they launch their attack, we hit them with everything we have. Agreed, said Admiral Clark. The element of surprise is our greatest advantage. They think they're attacking defenseless colonies. Instead, they'll face the most powerful human fleet in history. Helen made her decision. Continue current operations. Morrison and the other stealth ships keep monitoring Zephyrian preparations. All fleet units remain hidden until further orders. Colony defense systems stay concealed. The meeting broke up, but Helen remained in her chair. Through the window, she could see Earth's blue oceans and white clouds. 3 years ago, the Zephyrians had demanded humanity's surrender. Helen had given it to them. Now they would learn that sometimes surrender was just another word for preparation. The High Council chamber on the Zephyrian homeworld buzzed with nervous energy. War Commander Thexal stood before the ruling council, his yellow eyes burning with intensity as he presented his findings. 3 separate patrol groups have reported sensor contacts in the past week, Thexal announced. Small vessels operating deep in our territory. This is not random piracy, this is organized reconnaissance. Council leader Mordak, an ancient Zephyrian with scarred scales, leaned forward in his chair. You speak of human vessels, War Commander. But the humans have no fleet. We destroyed it 3 years ago. That's what we were meant to believe, Thexal replied. But the evidence suggests otherwise. Several council members hissed in disbelief. Council member Zaleth spoke up. Impossible. We monitored their surrender carefully. Their military was disbanded. Their shipyards were shut down. They agreed to remain in their home system. Thexal activated a holographic display showing the sector where the Defiant had been detected. Subcommander Veltar's readings were very clear. A warship, not debris. Active power systems, stealth capability, advanced sensors. No pirate group has such technology. Even if you're correct, said Council Leader Mordak, what could a few human ships accomplish? We have the largest fleet in the galaxy. That's exactly the kind of thinking that could get us killed, Thexal snapped. If humans have one stealth ship, they could have dozens, or hundreds. We know nothing about their true capabilities. In the depths of space, the UTS Defiant continued its mission, despite its damaged stealth systems. Captain Jake Morrison had managed to restore partial functionality, but the ship remained vulnerable to detection. Captain, Amy Rodriguez called, from her station. I'm intercepting increased Zephyrian communications. They're talking about sensor contacts throughout this entire sector. Jake studied the communication intercepts on his screen. The Zephyrians were definitely getting suspicious. More patrols were being deployed. Search patterns were becoming more aggressive. Lisa, plot a course back to human space. We need to report our findings. Aye, Captain. Plotting safest route through the patrol zones. Ryan Torres looked up from his engineering console. Captain, I've been thinking about our stealth failure. The timing was too convenient. What if the Zephyrians have developed new detection technology? Jake felt a chill run down his spine. If the Zephyrians could detect human stealth ships, then every vessel in the secret fleet was in danger. Amy, send a coded warning to all stealth units. Possible detection risk. Exercise extreme caution. On the hidden base in the Kuiper Belt, Dr. Sam Parker received an urgent message from Admiral Carter. The timeline for weapons production had been moved up. Instead of months, he had weeks to equip the entire human fleet. We need 500 plasma lance units in 2 weeks, Sam told his production team. I know it sounds impossible, but failure isn't an option. His chief engineer, Dr. Kate Wilson, shook her head. Sam, we don't have the manufacturing capacity. The power crystals alone take 3 days to grow. Then we'll use the emergency reserves. Strip every research facility and testing center. Take crystals from the prototype weapons if necessary. Meanwhile, Commander Beth Logan accelerated the training programs for human forces. Pilots who had been preparing for months were suddenly told they might deploy in days. Listen up, Beth told a group of fighter pilots. The situation has changed. You may be going into combat sooner than expected. Are you ready? Lieutenant Chris Murphy, one of the top pilots, raised his hand. Ma'am, are we talking about resuming the war? I'm talking about being prepared for anything, Beth replied. The Zephyrians think they won 3 years ago. If they discover the truth, they'll try to finish what they started. On New Haven, Colonial Administrator Peter Walsh received a coded message from Earth. Protocol 7 was now in effect. All hidden defenses were to be prepared for immediate activation. Peter walked through the settlement, looking at the peaceful colonists going about their daily lives. They had no idea that beneath their feet lay enough firepower to stop a Zephyrian invasion fleet. "Kevin," Peter said to his aide, "activate the defense network. Full power to all weapon systems. And start moving civilians to the underground shelters." "Sir, should I tell them why?" "Tell them it's a drill, for now." But Peter knew it might not be a drill much longer. If the Zephyrians discovered humanity's deception, New Haven would be one of their first targets. Back in Zephyrian space, War Commander Thexal was becoming more convinced that humanity had been playing a long game. He ordered massive increases in patrol activity and authorized the use of advanced sensor arrays to search for hidden ships. "Sir," his aide Sub-Commander Colran reported, "we're detecting unusual energy signatures near several human colonies. The patterns don't match normal civilian activity." Thexal studied the sensor data. High-energy emissions from worlds that should have only basic infrastructure. Power levels that suggested military installations. Increased surveillance of all human colonies. "I want to know what they're really doing on those worlds." On Earth, Admiral Helen Carter watched as reports flooded in from across human space. Zephyrian patrol activity had tripled in the past week. Their sensors were getting more sophisticated. It was only a matter of time before they discovered something that couldn't be explained away. "Roy," she said to Admiral Clark, "how quickly can we deploy the fleet?" 48 hours to full deployment. But Helen, if we reveal ourselves too early, we lose the element of surprise. If we wait too long, we lose everything." The debate was interrupted by a priority message from the UTS Shadow, another stealth reconnaissance ship. Captain Lisa Barnes reported that Zephyrian forces had nearly detected her vessel near their main naval base. "That's the third near miss this week," Colonel Mary Stewart observed. "They're definitely developing counter-stealth technology." Helen made her decision. "Send orders to all stealth units. Return to base immediately. We're pulling them out before we lose any ships." "What about ongoing surveillance?" "We'll have to rely on long-range sensors and communication intercepts. The close reconnaissance phase is over." In his command center, War Commander Thexal reviewed the latest intelligence reports. Human colonies were showing increased energy usage. Zephyrian patrols were detecting more sensor contacts. Something was definitely happening. "Colran," Thexal called his aide, "prepare a report for the High Council. I want authorization to begin military action against human colonies." "Sir, what charges should I cite?" "Violation of the Surrender Treaty. Unauthorized military development. Preparation for hostile action." "Do we have proof of these charges?" Thexal's eyes glowed with anger. "I don't need proof. I need authorization. The humans are planning something and we need to stop them before it's too late." 2 days later, the High Council reconvened an emergency session. Thexal's report painted a picture of growing human military activity and possible treaty violations. "The evidence is circumstantial," Council Leader Mordak admitted. "But the pattern is troubling. Circumstantial evidence is all we'll get until they attack us," Thexal argued. "By then, it will be too late to respond effectively." Council member Zaleth remained skeptical. "You're asking us to authorize military action based on sensor, readings, and energy signatures. This could start another war." "The war never ended," Thexal replied coldly. "We just stopped fighting for 3 years. The humans used that time to prepare for round 2. After hours of debate, the Council reached a decision. They would authorize limited military action against human colonies suspected of treaty violations. If the humans were really building hidden military forces, those forces would be destroyed before they could threaten Zephyrian security. On Earth, Admiral Carter's worst fears were realized when intelligence detected massive Zephyrian fleet movements toward human space. The bombardment fleet was deploying ahead of schedule, supported by regular military units. "It's happening," she told her staff. "They've figured out enough to justify an attack. All units are to deploy immediately." Admiral Clark stood up. "I'll take the fleet to defensive positions around our colonies." "No," Helen said firmly. "We don't defend, we attack." Hit their shipyards, their supply bases, their homeworld if necessary. Make them regret starting this fight. The careful deception was over. 3 years of planning were about to be put to the ultimate test. The Zephyrians thought they were attacking defenseless human colonies. They were about to discover how wrong they were. War Commander Thexal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought destroyer of worlds, as the Zephyrian invasion fleet approached human space. 200 warships moved in perfect formation, ready to crush what remained of human civilization. Target the colony of New Haven first, Thexal ordered. Once we destroy their largest settlement, the other worlds will surrender without a fight. His fleet had been preparing for this moment for months. The bombardment ships were loaded with planet-killing weapons. The troop transports carried enough soldiers to occupy every human world. This would be the final chapter in the human Zephyrian War. War Commander, his sensor officer called out. We're approaching New Haven now. The planet appears defenseless. No ships in orbit, minimal energy signatures. Thexal smiled with satisfaction. The humans had learned nothing from their previous defeat. They still thought they could hide behind their peace treaty. On New Haven, Colonial Administrator Peter Walsh watched the approaching enemy fleet on his tactical display. 200 Zephyrian ships against one small human colony. To any observer, it looked like certain death. Peter activated the colony-wide communication system. All residents, this is Administrator Walsh. Please move to designated shelter areas immediately. This is not a drill. But Peter wasn't afraid. Hidden beneath New Haven's surface were weapons that could destroy entire fleets. The Zephyrians were about to learn that appearances could be deceiving. Kevin, Peter said to his aide, activate all defense systems. Full power. Across the planet's surface, camouflaged panels slid open to reveal massive cannon emplacements. Shield generators hummed to life, creating protective barriers around populated areas. Missile silos that had been hidden for 3 years prepared to launch their deadly cargo. In space above New Haven, the lead Zephyrian ships began their attack run. They expected to face no resistance as they destroyed the human colony below. Instead, the planet suddenly bristled with defensive fire. Hundreds of missiles streaked up from the surface, their plasma warheads designed by Dr. Sam Parker specifically to penetrate Zephyrian shields. Energy cannons fired beams of concentrated power that could cut through ship hulls like paper. Impossible, Thexal roared as his ships came under heavy attack. The planet was supposed to be defenseless. 3 Zephyrian destroyers exploded in the first wave of defensive fire. More ships took critical damage as human weapons proved far more effective than anything from the previous war. But Peter Walsh was just getting started. Kevin, signal Admiral Clark. Tell him the party is ready to begin. In the depths of space, around New Haven, something extraordinary happened. The empty vacuum suddenly filled with human warships as the secret fleet dropped its stealth fields all at once. Admiral Roy Clark stood on the bridge of the UTS Retribution, watching as his fleet materialized around the surprised Zephyrian force. 50 human ships against 200 alien vessels. But these weren't the same ships the Zephyrians remembered from the war. All ships, Clark announced over the fleet communication channel. You are authorized to engage. Show them what 3 years of preparation can accomplish. The human fleet opened fire with devastating effect. Dr. Sam Parker's plasma lance technology proved even more effective in actual combat than in testing. The concentrated energy beams punched through Zephyrian shields and armor with ease. The UTS Defiant, its stealth systems finally repaired, appeared alongside 3 other reconnaissance ships that had been hiding throughout Zephyrian space. Captain, Jake Morrison felt a surge of satisfaction as he watched the aliens' shock and confusion. Amy, Jake ordered, broadcast a message on all Zephyrian frequencies. Tell them this is what happens when you underestimate humanity. Throughout the Zephyrian fleet, panic spread as their supposedly defeated enemy revealed weapons and tactics they had never seen before. Ships that should have been destroyed were absorbing massive damage and continuing to fight. Human missiles were penetrating their best defensive systems. War Commander Thexal watched in horror as half his fleet was destroyed in the first 10 minutes of combat. The humans weren't just fighting back, They were winning. "Retreat," he ordered. "All ships, emergency jump to hyperspace." But Admiral Clark had anticipated this reaction. Human ships had been positioned to block all escape routes. The Zephyrian fleet found itself trapped in a carefully planned ambush. On New Haven's surface, Peter Walsh watched the space battle through his tactical displays. Zephyrian ships were exploding faster than his computers could track. The enemy force that had seemed so overwhelming was being systematically destroyed. "Sir," Kevin reported, "we're receiving similar reports from all human colonies. Every Zephyrian attack has been met with overwhelming defensive fire." Peter smiled grimly. For 3 years, every human world had been preparing for this moment. Hidden weapons, trained fighters, secret alliances with other species who had suffered under Zephyrian rule. The aliens had thought they were attacking helpless colonies. Instead, they had flown into the most sophisticated military trap in galactic history. The battle around New Haven lasted less than an hour. Of the 200 Zephyrian ships that had arrived to destroy the colony, only 30 managed to escape. The rest were either destroyed or captured by human forces, but the real shock was yet to come. As the surviving Zephyrian ships limped back to their home territory, they found human fleets already attacking their shipyards and military bases. Admiral Helen Carter had deployed her forces throughout Zephyrian space, targeting every strategic location simultaneously. The secret human fleet numbered over 800 ships, more than double the size of their original navy. Each vessel was equipped with advanced weapons and shields that made them superior to anything the Zephyrians possessed. Dr. Sam Parker's plasma lance technology was just the beginning. Human ships also carried improved missiles, stronger armor, and defensive systems that could absorb incredible amounts of damage. 3 years of preparation had created a military force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. On the Zephyrian homeworld, the High Council gathered in emergency session as reports of military disasters flooded in from across their territory. "How is this possible?" Council Leader Mordak demanded. "The humans surrendered. Their fleet was destroyed." War Commander Thexal, his uniform torn and his scales blackened from battle damage, faced the Council with the bitter truth. "We were deceived. Completely and totally deceived. The surrender was fake. The peace treaty was a lie. They used our overconfidence against us. What are our losses? 60% of our fleet destroyed or captured. All major shipyards under attack. 3 colony worlds have already fallen to human forces." The Council fell silent as the magnitude of the disaster became clear. In a single day, the Zephyrian military had gone from overwhelming dominance to near collapse. "What are our options?" asked Council Member Zaleth. "Surrender," Thexal replied quietly. "The humans have proven they're not only our equals, they're our superiors. Our only choice is to accept whatever terms they offer." On Earth, Admiral Helen Carter received reports of complete victory across all fronts. The Zephyrian invasion had been crushed. Their fleet was scattered. Their military leadership was in chaos. But Helen wasn't satisfied with mere victory. The Zephyrians had come to commit genocide against humanity. That kind of aggression couldn't go unpunished. "All fleet commanders," she broadcast, "continue offensive operations. Every Zephyrian military asset is to be destroyed or captured. They wanted to finish the war, so let's finish it." In the ruins of what had been the most powerful alien fleet in the galaxy, Captain Jake Morrison piloted the UTS Defiant through the wreckage of Zephyrian ships. 3 years ago, these same vessels had seemed invincible. Now they were floating debris. "Captain," Amy Rodriguez called from her station, "we're receiving a message from the Zephyrian High Council. They're requesting terms for surrender." Jake looked around his bridge crew. Lisa Chen at navigation, Ryan Torres at engineering, Amy at communications. They had all played their part in humanity's greatest deception. "Forward the message to Admiral Carter," Jake ordered. "But tell them one thing first. Humanity doesn't accept surrender. We accept unconditional victory." The Second Human Zephyrian War was over before most people knew it had begun. The Zephyrian Collective, which had ruled much of the galaxy for centuries, collapsed in a matter of days. Their ships were captured, their leaders imprisoned, their worlds occupied by human forces. The galaxy learned that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their advanced technology or superior tactics. It was their ability to think beyond the conventional rules of warfare. While their enemies celebrated victory, humans had spent 3 years preparing for the real fight. Admiral Helen Carter stood in her office on Earth, looking out at the stars that now belonged to a human empire. The peace treaty signed 3 years. Ego had been a masterpiece of deception. By appearing to surrender, humanity had gained the time and motivation needed to become the dominant military power in the galaxy. The Zephyrians had been convinced of their victory. That conviction had become their downfall. Now there was a new peace in the galaxy. A peace enforced by human fleets and guaranteed by human strength. The aliens who had once threatened to destroy humanity now lived under human protection.